Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Luke Ness Monster, and today we're going to be looking over the 4 different iterations of the Black Series Clone Trooper mold. In my videos and a lot of other YouTubers' videos, there's a lot of talk of like the old clone body, or the 2020 clone body, or the 2023 clone body, and so I really wanted to take this video to do a deep dive into the 4 molds and do a comparison so that anybody who is new to Black Series collecting can really get an understanding of how these 4 molds are different. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different, like, one-off molds, because we have, like, ARC Troopers, or Pilots, or Commanders, and they're all slightly different, but really what we're going to be doing is breaking down the base body, because at the core, really, all Clone Troopers released in the line go down to 4 basic bodies. That is, of course, excluding the Elite Squad Trooper, which we'll get into in a second, because it's a weird one. First up, we're going to be looking at the 2013 clone body. This is the original clone mold, or the old clone mold. That's what most people are going to call it, but it is originally based off of the Revenge of the Sith / Attack of the Clones actual CG models from the movie, and because of that, they're considered the most realistic clone troopers in the Black Series line, but they also have the most problems. And that specifically just comes down to articulation. These things barely have any articulation at all when it comes to the arms, so as far as the shoulders go, they go up about that far. That's as far as you can get them up, so you know, barely any dynamic posing in the shoulders. And as far as the elbows go, that's about as far as the elbows go, so not even 90 degrees. It's really bad, and it makes it really hard to get these figures into dynamic poses. Obviously, there's no butterfly joints, and looking at the legs here, they can get about that far in the legs. And of course, another really big complaint about these figures is that they have the pinned look on the arms and the legs, and so they're just really ugly pins that allow for the double jointed arms to work. And they're just not my favorite. I know a lot of people also complain about them. I prefer the smooth plastic look on some of the future figures, and so I think that's just where most of the complaints come down to with this original Clone Trooper body, is the articulation and the pins. But of course, it does have the benefit of the more movie accurate look, as well as some really pretty good weathering, because most of these older Clone Troopers have some pretty solid weathering. But then in 2018, we actually did get the Black Series Captain Rex figure, and this figure is absolutely incredible. It is basically on this same old Clone Trooper base body, but it has a lot of upgrades. The legs are exactly the same, the exact same double jointed pinned legs, but it's the torso and arms that really get the big upgrade here. As far as the arms go, the torso here has a much like wider circle, and so when you go to put the arms up, the shoulder pads actually go underneath the edge of the torso, and so you can get him up into that T-pose look that you couldn't get the original Clone Trooper into. And then of course there is the updated elbows to where you can actually get well past 90, and this is what a lot of people really like this Rex body for, is for the elbows, because you can get some super dynamic poses that even some of the newer Clone Troopers can't get into. Now, the downside to this mold is it still does have the pinned look on all of the joints, but for the most part, it really fixes a lot of the problems that people had with that original 2013 mold. But unfortunately, Hasbro really only ever did 4 figures on this mold. They did Rex, they did Bly, they did the 501st Jet Trooper, part of the Gaming Greats line, and then they also did Clone Pilot Hawk. A lot of people still have this one listed as like their favorite Clone Trooper mold, and I can definitely see where they're coming from. I can't say it's quite my favorite anymore, but it's still definitely high up there when it comes to really solid molds. Then in 2020, we got a brand new Clone Trooper mold. This one is heavily inspired by the Clone Wars animated series, but this is going to be the 212th representing this one. And as you can see, it is a completely brand new mold head to toe. And so we'll get his blaster out of the way here so you can actually see, but the updates in articulation are phenomenal. Now, of course, instead of the shoulder pads actually going into the torso, they actually go on top of the torso because it's molded in this like really soft fabric, and so you can still get him into this nice T-posed look, but it does allow a little bit of like a wrinkle here on the shoulder pad, so I wouldn't keep it in that pose for too long, but it does have that ability now, which is awesome. And of course, you can kind of see popping out there are the butterfly joints, which are huge improvements. And it really was the addition of these butterfly joints that allow for this Clone Trooper to get in some really nice weapon-holding poses. You can actually have the figure look down the sights of the blaster, which is something that you could never get done on that original clone body. But this one did have a few problems. The helmet here actually does have a head sculpt molded underneath it. It's hard to see because it is glued on, But the problem with this is that caused a lot of warping for the figures, and so the helmet would come out a little janky sometimes. Another big problem is the knee pads are actually glued to the top of the thigh here, and so, you know, if you wanted him in a kneeling position, the knee pad just isn't covering the knee. And that was a big problem, and a lot of people really did not like the knee pads on this figure. But one of the biggest upgrades is that they went to a single jointed pinless look compared to the double jointed pin. So a lot of people are like, is the articulation going to get worse since they're, you know, cutting a pin down? It's no longer double jointed, it's single jointed. But if you look at it, it does get well past 90. It's not quite as much as the Captain Rex mold, but it gets the job done, and I think it does look really good doing it. But I do think the improvement of no pins on the figure really makes it worth it because, you know, look how clean the leg and the arm here. There's no pin that sticks out or looks bad, you know, comparing it to even something like Captain Rex here. These pins are so obvious, and it's one of those, like, I really like that they were able to clean that up and make it look a lot nicer. Now, Hasbro's initial response to fixing the problem with the knee pads on this 2020 Clone Trooper is they actually released the Elite Squad Trooper here, which is this black and green Clone Trooper. And essentially what they did is they took the top, like, upper torso here from that 2020 clone body, and they took the legs from the original clone body, and they merged them together. And so we got this kind of, like, kit bash of a Clone Trooper. And I think it got the job done. It did fix the knee problem, so you don't have the knee actually glued to the top anymore, which is good. But overall, this just didn't really stick, and so I don't count this as like a primary clone mold, just because it's the kit bash between two other molds, and they only ever did it once. They have never done it again. So I'm not sure if it just didn't sit well with them, or if it didn't sell well. We don't really know, but just a few years later, they would go ahead and update that 2020 clone body, so this one would become way, way obsolete. But that 2020 body was used for almost 3 years, and so we got a ton of figures on it, and something like your ARC Troopers are going to be all on that 2020 body. They do have a little, you know, armor pieces here and updated helmets, all that kind of stuff, so it makes it a little bit different, but the base body on these figures are that 2020 body. But jumping up to 2023, we actually did get the brand new 2023 clone body, which is the base body of the 2020 with a few different upgrades. For starters, one of the biggest problems on that 2020 clone body was that it looked too animated. It wasn't realistic enough, and a lot of people complained about that, and so they actually did two things to fix this. For starters, they made the helmet slightly bigger. It is a brand new helmet mold for this guy, and so it's a little bit more realistic, and then the chest and shoulder pads are also brand new as well, making them slightly bigger and a lot more accurate to a realistic clone trooper. Another change that they made is they actually fixed the problem with the shoulder pads, because the shoulder pads would go up onto the shoulder here and cause a crease in the shoulder pads, but they fixed that by putting them on O-rings, and so when you lift it up, it just lifts up with it. There's no creasing in the shoulder pad at all, and that completely fixes that problem, putting this on an actual O-ring. It makes it a whole lot better and prevents any possible damage. They also did something very similar to the 2020 Stormtrooper. They actually made this like chest piece a floating chest piece, and so it's not like glued on or anything like that. It's just kind of sitting on the figure. It's kind of hard to see, but it does move, and this does allow you to kind of make it a little bit bigger, so you got that more realistic look, and I do think this is a huge upgrade. Another big upgrade in this 2023 clone body is that they all have removable helmets. They're a little tight on the figure. That helmet just went flying. But they all have Tamora Morrison head sculpts underneath, which is awesome. That's something that the 2020 body just didn't have. And so this might change moving forward. We really don't know yet, but as far as right now goes, every single 2023 clone body released has had a head sculpt underneath with that Tamora Morrison look, so that's always really good to see. With the addition of the new shoulder pads, they also added bicep swivels to the arms, so additional articulation there is always great. And they also added an indent on the inside of this bicep, so now whenever you go and you crease the elbow here, there's no pinching on this kind of plastic strap, because there was a big concern about this strap actually breaking because it's being pinched, but they actually molded it in to this to where it prevents that, which is always really nice. Then of course, the legs here are the exact same mold as the 2020 mold, but they fixed the biggest problem and they stopped gluing down the knee pad. So now the knee pad is actually floating, so you can actually move it up or down wherever you want to put it, but it's no longer glued down, and so that fixed one of the biggest complaints with that 2020 body, is that the knee pad is no longer on top. It really is crazy to see all the changes that have went through these base 4 clone trooper bodies, and I'd really like to see what more improvements they can make in the future, because back in 2020, that Clone Trooper was incredible, and now looking back now, it's not quite as good as I remember because of how good that 2023 body is. So maybe in another 2 or 3 years we'll get a new clone body, and it'll be even better than the 2023 body. But yeah, this was a deep dive into the 4 base Clone Trooper molds. Hopefully this was informative, and hopefully you now know kind of how to navigate your Black Series Clone Trooper collection, but that is going to do it for this video. So if you did enjoy, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment down below what you think the best Clone Trooper mold is. For me, it's got to be that brand new 2023 body, but I know everybody has different opinions, so let me know down in the comments what you think. But that is going to do it for this video, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.